ITV Granada is the Channel 3 regional service for northwest England. The licence for the region has been held by ITV Broadcasting Limited since November 2008. It is the largest independent television franchise producing company in the UK, accounting for 25% of the total broadcasting output of the ITV network. It had been held by Granada Television, which was founded by Sidney Bernstein and based at Granada Studios on Quay Street in Manchester since its inception. This was the only surviving company of the original four independent television authority franchisees from 1954. Granada Media Group merged with Carlton Communications to form ITV plc in 2004. It covers Cheshire, Greater Manchester, Lancashire, Merseyside, northwestern Derbyshire, part of Cumbria and North Yorkshire. On the 15th of July 2009, the Isle of Man was transferred to ITV Granada from ITV Border. Broadcasting by Granada Television began on the 3rd of May 1956 under the North of England weekday franchise. It was marked by a distinctive northern identity, and used stylized letter G logo forming an arrow pointing north, often with the tagline, Granada, from the north. Granada plc merged with Carlton Communications to form ITV plc in 2004 after a duopoly had developed over the previous decade. The Granada name, as with those of the other former Channel 3 regional license holders, has completely disappeared except for the regional news bulletins and weeknightly regional news magazine. ITV Broadcasting Limited operates the service with national ITV branding and continuity. Granada Television Limited still legally exists, along with most other regional companies owned by ITV plc. It is listed on www.companies house gov UK as a dormant company. Other companies listed are Granada Television International and Granada Television Overseas Limited, but these are either dormant and non-trading. The Northwest region is regarded as ITV's most successful franchise. The Financial Times and The Independent once described Granada Television, the former franchise holder, as the best commercial television company in the world. 9 Granada programs were listed in the BFI TV 100 in 2000. Some of its most notable programs include Coronation Street, 7 Up, The Royal Family, The Jewel in the Crown, Brideshead Revisited, World in Action, University Challenge and The Krypton Factor. Notable employees have included Paul Greengrass, Michael Apted, Mike Newell, Jeremy Isaacs, Andy Harris, Russell T. Davis and Leslie Woodhead. History. Origins. Granada Television, a subsidiary of Granada Limited, originated in Granada Theatres Limited, which owned cinemas in the south of England. It was founded in Dover in 1930 by Sidney Bernstein and his brother Cecil. The company was incorporated as Granada Limited in 1934 and listed on the London Stock Exchange in 1935. Granada Theatres Limited became a subsidiary of the new company. It is named after the Spanish city of Granada. The Bernsteins became involved in commercial television, a competitor to the cinema chains. Bernstein bid for the North of England franchise, which he believed would not affect the company's largely southern-based cinema chain. In 1954, the Independent Television Authority awarded Granada the North of England contract for Monday to Friday, with ABC serving the same area on weekends. The companies used the ITA's Winter Hill and Emley Moor transmitters covering Lancashire and the West and East Ridings of Yorkshire, including the major conurbations around Liverpool, Manchester, Leeds, Bradford, Sheffield and Doncaster. The North and London were the two biggest regions. Granada preferred the North because of its tradition of homegrown culture, and because it offered a chance to start a new creative industry away away from the metropolitan atmosphere of London. The North is a closely knit indigenous, industrial society, a homogeneous cultural group with a good record for music, theatre, literature and newspapers, not found elsewhere in this island, except perhaps in Scotland. Compare this with London and its suburbs, full of displaced persons. And, of course, if you look at a map of the concentration of population in the North and a rainfall map, you will see that the North is an ideal place for television. Bernstein selected a base from Leeds and Manchester. Granada executive Victor Pears believed Manchester was the preferred choice even before executives toured the region to find a suitable site. Granada Studios, designed by architect Ralph Tubbs, was built on a site on Key Street in Manchester city centre belonging to Manchester City Council, which the company bought for £82,000. Transmissions began in Lancashire on 3 May 1956, and Yorkshire 6 months later. The opening night featured Meet the People hosted by Quentin Reynolds and comedian Arthur Askey. Reynolds became inebriated before the broadcast and had to sober up. Early years most ITV franchisees viewed the territories as stopgaps before winning a coveted London franchise. In contrast, Granada determined to develop a strong northern identity, northern voices, northern programs, northern idents with phrases such as Granada from the north, Granada and Granadaland. Bernstein refused to employ anyone not prepared to live in it. Travel to Manchester, and Jeremy Isaacs called him a genial tyrant as a result. I think that what Manchester sees today, London will see eventually. Bernstein decided to build new studios rather than hiring space or converting old buildings, an approach favoured by the other ITV companies and by the BBC at its original Manchester studios. The investment in new studios in 1954 contributed to Granada's struggling financially, and the company was close to insolvency by late 1956. All four ITA franchisees were expected to make losses in the first few years of operation, but Granada's was a significant sum of £175,000. When it first became profitable, it had the lowest profits of the quartet. Granada sought the help of Associated Rediffusion, the London weekday station, which agreed to underwrite Granada's debts in exchange for a percentage of its profits, without the consent of the ITA, who would have blocked it. Granada accepted the deal, but the popularity of ITV increased and profitability followed. Analysts questioned how Associated Rediffusion, ABC and ATV were making annual profits of up to £2.7 million by 1959, and yet Granada's profits were under £1 million. With the increase in income, Granada tried to renegotiate the contract. Associated Rediffusion refused, souring relations for many years. The deal was worth over £18 million to Rediffusion. By the early 1960s, Granada was established, and its soap opera Coronation Street quickly became popular. His did inexpensive game shows such as Criss Cross Quiz and University Challenge. Franchise changes. In the 1968 franchise round, Granada's contract was changed from weekdays across the northern England region to the whole week in the northwest from Winter Hill Transmitting Station. Yorkshire was defined as a separate region, and the contract awarded to Yorkshire Television Broadcasting from Emley Moor Transmitting Station. Its transmissions could be received in parts of North Lincolnshire. Bernstein was angered by the decision to split Granadaland, and claimed he would appeal to the United Nations. Granada Television was received in what is now Greater Manchester, Lancashire, Merseyside and Cheshire, the south of what is now Cumbria around Barrow-in-Furness, the High Peak district of Derbyshire and parts of the Isle of Man. Parts of North Wales can receive only the Winter Hill transmissions rather than HTV. Granada retained its franchise in the 1980 Franchise Review, and invested in multi-million-pound dramatic serial productions such as The Jewel in the Crown and Brideshead Revisited. By the late 1980s, the UK commercial broadcasters were considered too small to compete in the world market, and the ITV franchises began to consolidate with the aim of creating a single company with a larger budget. The Broadcasting Act of 1990 instigated the 1991 franchise auction round, in which companies had to bid for the regions. Mersey Television, a company producing the Channel 4 soap opera Brookside, bid £35 million compared to Granada's £9 million, but Granada won as Mersey's package did not meet the quality threshold applied by the Independent Television Commission. This requirement disadvantaged companies with no previous franchise experience. Granada owned popular television series such as Coronation Street, which it threatened to sell to satellite TV if the franchise was lost. The government responded by relaxing the regulatory regime, so that ITV contractors could take over other companies, and Granada bought several companies. Some at the company considered ITV could survive only as a single merged entity to have sufficient resources to produce big-budget programs, a concern that increased when Sky B began to take ITV's viewing share, leading to less advertising revenue, the source of ITV's income. David Plowright, who had worked at Granada since 1957, resigned in 1992 citing the arrival of Jerry Robinson. He tightened the departmental budget with an uncompromising business approach. Plowright had been the company's driving force, producing programs such as World in Action and Coronation Street, and promoting the Granada Studios tour. His departure angered well-known media industry figures. John Cleese faxed Robinson using vitriolic language and called him an upstart caterer, a reference to his past employment. John Burt, Harold Pinter and Alan Bennett all supported Plowright for his quality programming. Takeover bids. The so-called Big Five ITV franchisees Thames, LWT, Central, Granada, and Yorkshire Television were expected to take over the 10 smaller franchises. Granada wanted to consolidate with Yorkshire and Tyneside Television to counter the potential dominance of the South East, and the prospect of being taken over by Thames Television. Granada made a hostile bid for LWT in December 1993, but LWT believed Granada had little to offer despite having 3 times the market capitalization. Granada, however, completed the takeover in 1994. Granada continued to expand by acquiring Yorkshire Tyneside Television for £652 million in 1997 and bought UNM's television assets for £1.75 billion in 2000, by which it acquired Anglia Television and Meridian Broadcasting and some divisions of HTV, the remaining divisions passing to rival company Carlton due to competition laws. A year later, it acquired Border from Capital Radio Group. By 2002, Granada had established an effective duopoly of ITV with Carlton Television owning all the ITV companies in England and Wales, the franchises in Scotland, UTV in Northern Ireland, and Channel Television in the Channel Islands, remained independent. Granada was in a poor financial state and closed the Granada Studios tour in 2001, citing decreasing visitor figures. The real reason was the decision to increase production of episodes for Coronation Street to 5 per week. Without access to that set, the highlight of the tour, the Granada Studios tour venture, was no longer viable. The company also closed Granada Film. The emergence of digital television cut ITV's viewing share, decreasing advertising revenue. which was already suffering from competition with the Internet. The failure of ITV Digital cost Granada and Carlton losses estimated at over £1 billion, reducing the company's value from 2001 to 2003. ITV Granada and the unification of ITV on 28 October 2002. In a network-wide relaunch, Granada was rebranded as ITV1 Granada. The Granada name was shown before regional programs, but this has ceased. Its name has vanished from screens, as have all other ITV regional identities. Since rebranding, all continuity announcements are made from London. The Granada logo appeared at the end of its own programs until 31 October 2004. Granada was permitted by the government to merge with Carlton on 2 February 2004 to form ITV plc. The move was a takeover by Granada, whose market capitalisation was double that of Carlton at nearly £2 billion. Granada owned 68% of the shares and Carlton 32%. Chairman-designate Michael Green was ousted by shareholders and the majority of new board members originated from Granada. Carlton employees were subsumed in Granada operations and made redundant, with 3 out of 4 new departments led by Granada staff. For 1 November 2004, Granada Productions were credited Granada Manchester, the brand of the unified in-house production arm, but on 21 September 2005, it was announced that Granada's name would no longer appear at the end of programs. The in-house production arm was renamed ITV Productions. The change on 16 January 2006 coincided with the relaunch of ITV's on-screen graphics. Granada's name and logo were used at the end of programs made for other networks, such as University Challenge for BBC Two and old programs shown on Sky B channels 1, 2 and the former 3, until 2009. In November 2006, Granada lost its on-air identity when regional programming voiced ITV1 or ITV1 Granada over a generic ident. Local news coverage was branded Granada News except for the main 18.0 Granada Reports bulletin. Granada Reports' main rival is BBC Northwest Tonight, broadcast to roughly the same region. In 2009, ITV removed the Granada brand from all departments, including its international production arm, Granada America, which became ITV Studios America. End credits on programs made at the Manchester studios were credited to ITV Studios. Present. ITV made cutbacks, dropping 600 jobs in 2009, which effectively closed the Yorkshire Television Leeds studios. More redundancies were made in London, leaving Granada relatively unscathed. In the 2009 ITV regional news cutbacks, Granada was one of 3 regions unaffected by changes except for picking up the Isle of Man. ITV is obliged by UK communications regulator Ofcom to produce 50% of its programmes outside London, something it failed to achieve in 2007 and 2008. With this obligation, retaining Manchester as the northern hub, and an £80 million move to Media City UK on 25 March 2013, ITV appears to be committed to the Granada region for the foreseeable future. Studios. In the 18 months between the award of the franchise and the start of transmission, Granada built a brand new studio complex on Key Street. The site was reportedly previously a cemetery for paupers' graves, where 22,000 people were buried. An article in the Sun newspaper and an episode of the TV series Most Haunted seem to be the only sources for this claim. In 2009, 12 maps from between 1772 and 1960 show no evidence of a cemetery, and buildings are shown on the Bull China site from 1807. Part of the Manchester and Salford, Junction Canal, which linked the River Irwell to the Rochdale Canal from 1839 to 1922, ran in a tunnel underneath the site. The studios predate BBC Television Centre by 4 years and were the first purpose-built television studios in the United Kingdom. Bernstein exaggerated the scale of the studios to make Granada appear a rival to the BBC, and gave the floors only even numbers so that it appeared there were 12 floors in the building despite there being 6. The studios are operated by 360 Media, ITV Studios joint venture company with BBC Resources Limited, now at BBC Manchester. The studios produce shows displaced by the closure of the Yorkshire Television Studios in Leeds in 2009, including Channel 4's Countdown. In September 2010, the noted 1950s red landmark Granada TV sign on the roof and entrance of Granada Studios on Key Street was removed for safety reasons after maintenance found it was badly corroded. Some have claimed the signs will be returned. The Museum of Science and Industry has registered an interest in inheriting the sign, deeming it important to Manchester's cultural heritage. Relocation. After the ITV merger in 2004, the possibility of selling the Key Street site was considered, with Star Studios and offices moved into the adjacent bonded warehouse building. ITV anticipated the BBC would buy the land, but the BBC opted to move to the Peel Group's Media City UK development in Salford Quays. ITV considered relocating to Trafford Wharf across the Manchester Ship Canal from the BBC at Media City UK. Discussions continued for several years and an agreement in principle was reached in 2008. In March 2009, in the recession, Granada announced it would remain at Key Street, but after a change of management, talks resumed in January 2010. 2 years later, on the 16th of December 2010, Granada announced it would move to the Orange Building in Media City UK alongside the University of Salford. It planned to build a studio to produce the ITV flagship soap opera Coronation Street on the opposite bank of the Ship Canal on Trafford Wharf. Planning permission was granted and building work started on the 6th of September 2011 with the goal of completion in 2012. ITV Granada moved to Media City UK on the 25th of March 2013. Identity. Throughout its history, Granada Television used the logo of an arrow pointing northwards in idents, often accompanied by a tagline, "From the North." Sidney Bernstein wanted to present a northern identity. Granada Television was considered bolder than other franchisees and the BBC, and placed great emphasis displaying the northern style which distinguished it from them. Bernstein believed the North had untapped creative energy that needed cultivation. In 1958, 2 years after its launch, Granada Television's northern style was apparent. Kenneth Clark, of the Independent Television Authority which led the franchise, remarked, "We did not quite foresee how much Granada Television would develop a character which distinguishes it most markedly from the other programs, companies and from the BBC." Peter Salmon, of the BBC, said, "Granada Television made TV programs in the Northwest, for Northerners, reflecting Northern culture and attitudes." Idents. For its launch in 1956 until 1968, when the pointed G logo was introduced, the channel used captions and animations featuring a thin arrow pointing upwards and Granada in a stylized font, in boxes. The arrow pointed at the N in Granada, pointing north, and sometimes animated revealing the slogan, "From the North," before the Granada name. The pointed G was originally white on a grey background, but after the introduction of colour, grey was replaced with blue, with the name in yellow. A colour emblem was used from the 1970s until it was replaced by a series of idents to celebrate Granada Television's 30th anniversary on the 3rd of May 1986, when it was a computer-animated pointed G against a graded background and a cake covered in candles in the pointed G shape. On the 1st of September 1986, Granada Television reverted to using a caption featuring a Goldachrome 3D pointed G on a graded blue background. Granada Television used in-vision continuity featuring northern personalities giving messages. It was common for the logo to be seen for a few seconds after the continuity before the program, and continuity was rarely given over the symbol. On the 5th of June 1989, Granada Television launched a look featuring a translucent pointed G, which rotated into place in time to the music against a natural scene. When the first ITV generic look was launched, Granada Television refused to adopt it, because the Granada Television logo was incorrectly inserted into the V segment of the logo. The company used a version with its translucent logo shown at the beginning, before continuing with the generic ident and ending with the generic ITV logo. On the 4th of June 1990, Granada Television, in the run-up to the 1990 franchise round, relaunched its on-screen branding to a blue stripe descending from the top of the screen, containing the pointed G, against a plain white background accompanied by the same music as previously. Variations were seen from which the stripe formed from a falling feather was backlit. On the 11th of May 1992, the stripe descended to reveal a rainbow of colors before becoming the usual blue, and this ident stays on screen until the 1st of January 1995. On the 3rd of January 1994, Granada Television introduced a series of films featuring flags with its logo against various scenes in the region, accompanied by the slogan, "Setting the Standard." These introduced local programming, Granada reports, or promotions. On the 2nd of January 1995, the stripe theme was modified. The pointed G was larger on the blue stripe against a computer-generated multicolored background, and the G was created by filming a large perspex G with motion control photography. This ident was used from a variety of angles until the 7th of November 1999, by which point additional idents based on surreal surroundings such as a fish blowing a bubble with a G inside which floated to the surface, or a camera zoom into the eye of a housewife to reveal the G in her eye were introduced. All the idents were replaced on the 8th of November 1999 when Granada Television took the generic hearts idents. Granada Television kept the pointed G logo, made slightly thinner and placed in a box at the top of the screen. The dual branding of Granada Television and ITV lasted until the 28th of October 2002, when regional identities were dropped in favor of the new ITV1 channel brand. The Celebrities ident package featured plain ITV1 idents for all national programs, and Granada Television placed under the ITV1 logo for regional programs. This practice continued until the 16th of January 2006, when no name was used, and Granada Productions was replaced with ITV Productions on program endboards. The Granada Television logo continued on endboards until this date. The Granada name was used on announcements before local programming over a generic ITV1 ident until all non-news regional programming was scrapped. On the 14th of January 2013, the station's on-air identity was changed to ITV, along with all other ITV plc-owned franchises. During the early days, the pointed G logo was used on two other subsidiary businesses. Firstly came the Red Arrow television rental chain. During the days when many families preferred to rent the TV sets to offset poor reliability and changing fashions, this company fared well alongside the established heavy hitters such as radio rentals. The company's opening promotion was to give every new customer a small, Hiawatha-style figurine to stand on top of the new TV set. Upon its success, the name was later changed to Granada TV Rental. Based on the results of this company, Granada Television dipped its toes into the office furniture rental business with Black Arrow. This business was less successful. On Bridge Street in Manchester, the adjacent street to the Granada TV studios, stands a dry cleaning business called Granada Dry Cleaners. Despite the company's logo and shop fascia signs aping exactly the Granada Television logo typeface, Granada Dry Cleaners is a wholly independent, family-run business. It was established in 1957 by Gerald and Ronnie Singer and has no connection whatsoever with Granada TV or its subsidiaries. However, the then-current ITV logo from 2013 was placed on the giant black tile on the wall, and Granada TV signs were removed from the grass front. On Granada Studios tour entrance, the 2000s ITV logo was replaced by an 2013 ITV logo on above of Granada logo and wheel. The demolition is set to completion on the 29th of April 2016. To make way for office and residential development. As of March 2016, the G Arrow trademark is owned by Matco Limited.